to deliver his talk. I need not tell you that we all enjoyed his dramatic presentation yesterday, and I look forward to another equally interesting and visually as well as technical.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dr. Sagar. Does that mean you are allowing me to walk around the stage?
And just about do anything so long as you don't destroy anything around.
Okay, I shall try very hard not to. Thank you very much, Chair. So, thank you very much for two excellent speakers. My very good friend, Don Berwick, is with IHI, and my very good friend, VK, who writes books on innovation. Excellent books, I highly recommend them. My only trouble, my only worry, is that I too edit books, and I don't know which to recommend to you. Perhaps they should read both our books. That's the solution, an innovative solution. You have given me inspiration. Thank you. So the topic, thank you to the organisers, the topic that I would like to talk about is change in sustainability. And because I knew a little bit about what the previous two speakers were going to talk about, I've constructed a little bit of a different talk, and I'm going to take a global perspective, if I may. So a little bit about me. I've already explained this if you came to my talk yesterday. I'm the founding director of the Australian Institute of Health Innovation. That's about 130 researchers who do research in Australia, but also elsewhere in the world, on improvement, on how do we get more innovative, continuously improving healthcare. And we have a number of centres and people who run, professors who run different parts of our institute, and there's a little picture of some of us. So, and what we do is we don't do medical research where we are in a lab. Our laboratory is in fact all the health systems in the world, which are continuously throwing up ideas for us to do research to try and improve the way care is delivered for patients. So, what do we now know about what to do to improve healthcare? We know quite a lot, and we've heard quite a lot of this in the last day and a half. For example, checklists in operating theatres, or care bundles in intensive care, hand hygiene programs, root cause analysis, clinical guidelines, productive organisational cultures to nurture a culture that delivers higher quality care, e-health solutions. We've heard much of this in the last day and a half. But there's something missing. There's something that worries me. There's something that keeps me awake at night. And that is, it's very hard to realise these improvements in a way. That's why we have IHI. Because it's hard to know what to do and then to make changes in a health system. That's why VK writes books. Because if it was easy, there would be no need for us to write such books. There would be no need for us to have IHI. Every hospital, every setting would do it, because we actually know what to do. So there's a couple of problems there. One is at the local level, improving care for patients, based on all the things we know. And then the other thing that keeps me awake at night is, how do we spread this message across the whole world? How do we get health systems across the world to be improving? So, I did what all researchers do. I did some research. One of the things we looked at is, how many of the large transformations that we ask health systems to do, like embrace root cause analysis or hand hygiene or whatever it might be, what proportion of those are implemented using the scientific method? We've all been brought up, have we not, with the scientific method. So I would say that if we're really going to know when we do an implementation in a health system, then what we might do is do it for part of the health system, keep the other part not having that intervention, in other words, it's a control group, and then measuring at time 2, time 3, and time 4 to answer two questions. One is, did the intervention have an effect different from the control group? And the second thing is, did the change stick at time 2, time 3, time 4, and time 5? And that's a word we use. It's in the title of my talk. That title, by the way, I didn't come up with. The organisers gave me this talk. They gave me this title. And so that's the word sustainability. So did we measurably improve things sustainably? That's the $64 question. So we did some research, and you know, of all the large-scale systems-level interventions that people have done across the world, we only found 6 studies that did a systems-level intervention and did it according to good science. There's lots of stuff on drug trials. There's lots of clinical trials, but hardly anything on, well, we're going to intervene in a whole system to improve the quality of care. That even goes, dare I criticize IHI for IHI, which has created lots of improvement using PDSA and Sheward cycles and all those sort of things, but hasn't stopped sometimes to measure. Now, there's a reason for that. It costs money to do that sort of research. So there's a problem that I think the Indian health system and other health systems could really try and do. Next time we want a large-scale intervention, stop, and let's think about whether we intervene and roll this out using the scientific method. That would be my argument. Okay, so we wrote this paper, do large-scale hospital and system-wide interventions, improve patient outcomes, a systematic review, and we only found 6 studies. I think we all should really pause and think about that. Here's another study we did. So, okay, now we're trying to do change. And some of us have come to think about this as implementation science. Let's do some science around change, not just let's stick the next root cause analysis design into a system. Let's do this scientifically. So we've come to call that implementation science. So we had a look at the implementation science literature, and we looked at what are the success factors for implementation science, and we published a paper a couple of years on this. Again, if you want a copy, I think it's an open access, but if you want a copy, you can send me an email and I'll send you back a PDF copy. I'll get rid of some slides and just say, this is what we said after we looked through all the implementation science literature to say, what would be a good prescription for success if you're implementing, say, a new quality and safety initiative. And here's the model. You don't have to read the paper. It's captured on one slide. You've got to prepare well for change. You've got to look at your capacity to implement this. I see people implementing things in healthcare all the time, and I really worry, is this right for this hospital? Have they got the capacity to do this? Have they got the leadership and the receptive culture to embrace the change? I worry about that. You probably do too. And the capacity for change is at both the organisational level and then it's at the staff level. Have we got suitably trained people? And then you have to think, in our model, of the types of implementation. What is it that you're actually implementing? What's that going to do to perturb, to change, to influence, interfere with the system? And then you have to think, well, do I have the resources and the leverage for this? In other words, am I just going to ask the system, the hospital say, to change and take on board this new initiative without giving any resources? People are already busy. Some people are just hanging on by their fingernails. It's so busy. And then the final thing is it sustainable? Have we done something to implement something and then created it as a sustainable initiative? I think these are very important factors for anyone doing change and improvement and implementation science. So a couple of other examples just to give you some inspiration from across the world. I'm part of the World Health Organization's Patient Safety Network, looking at how do we do patient safety, not just in one country or a handful of countries or OECD countries, which is what people often think about, but how do you do this across the world? So Liam Donaldson is my colleague. In fact, I'm travelling back on Sunday, get to Australia on Monday, and I'm meeting Liam. He's spending a week with us in Australia, and we're going to give some talks on patient safety across Australia. And there's Liam signing up countries to the World Health Organization's initiatives. Despite all that's said about being connected by Twitter and email and Facebook, there is no substitute for face-to-face discussions. That's why we still have conferences, and you don't beam us in by Skype into the conference. There's nothing like it. And I think Indian culture knows that very well about relationships. So here he is, signing people up to the 5 moments of hand hygiene and other initiatives of IHI and WHO. They started off in 2005 with that many countries involved. That's what it looked like by 2014. All these countries involved in a WHO initiative, a global challenge. And I was in Bonn in Germany a couple of weeks ago, and the most recent challenge is going to be medication safety, and it was announced only 2 weeks ago. And so hopefully we'll get coverage like that across the world of people trying to do medication safety much better than they do now. So, those are just more slides on this. So, other initiatives that I would recommend, maybe you have a look at, is the Clinical Excellence Commission in New South Wales, in my own state in Australia, which has done excellent work on deteriorating patients. I won't give you the slides because I want to finish on a video if we can get it to work. So this is a project, and you can have these slides. This is a project in Australia. You can tell it's Australia, can't you? Somebody, a lifesaver on an Australian beach, saving somebody. That's very Australian. And the aim was to make sure that just like on an Australian beach, if you swim between the flags on the beach, you will have a lifesaver who will save you if you get into trouble. You should never, if you go to Australia, swim on a beach, even if it looks nice, outside of the flags. So in healthcare, we should always have patients within the parameters of their vital signs and be monitoring them continuously in case they deteriorate. So this uses a metaphor of between the flags to try and apply this to deteriorating patients. And we wrote a paper on this in BMJ Quality and Safety. This just explains how we do that, and you can have a copy of the slides. Two other things I'm doing is, one is I wrote a book in 2015, edited from a whole lot of countries across the world, all writing about their health reform and what they were doing about health reform. It's a goldmine. It's like your book. I've just started to read your book this morning. It's a goldmine of ideas. You should never think that you don't have any ideas for what to do to improve things in your health system. So that's the book, Health Reform, Quality and Safety. And this is the global representation. And you can see two very important countries made a contribution to this book. Can you see two very important countries in this map? Yes. What's the second one? What's the second country of the two very important countries? See, I thought it was India.
Australia's second.
Yes, Australia's second. Well, that's not very hospitable. So, here's the common difficulties people faced. We've discussed these in the last couple of days. If you haven't got enough resources, if the medical profession doesn't want to absorb the new change or be involved because they're treating patients rather than getting involved in quality, all these sort of problems that we've discussed. And the main thing for the book is you can't get change going unless you engage staff, and patients are in the middle of the reform, at the heart of it. I've written another book, Success Stories in 60 Countries. This is in press, edited, where I've asked 60 countries to each write one success story. One success story about reform and improvement in their health system. I'm pleased to say I have some Indian authors who are actually in the audience. This is the coverage now we've got of this book, all the shaded areas. So we've got many more countries involved, and we want some more from Africa for the next book we're going to work on. So, there's common factors linked to your success. And Chair, I'm going to finish on time. You will be pleased to know. Except I would like to show a 2-minute video with your approval. Could someone press a button on the video, please? Finally, here's a video for you just to finish off with. It only lasts 2 minutes. And this is what I think is at the heart of innovation. Your idea, sir, about innovation. If you can do this in your health system, you'll be fantastic. This is 1950 in Indianapolis.
But Holland comes in for a pit stop. Time to refuel and change tires. Littlemore himself changes the tires. Only 4 crew members, including the driver, are allowed to work on the car. It's a tense time. Holland stays in his seat, anxious to get away. Let's watch.
See the guy banging the tire to get the tire off?
at last. A crewman polishes the windshield as Holland moves away just 67 seconds after he stopped.
So that was 67 seconds, very fast for the time. If you want more information about innovation, just read VK's book. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And as usual, it was dramatic. You didn't disappoint us. Now,